Hey guys, this is Brad from Blue Nile Farm. Welcome to my series on farming from scratch. This is episode 16 today, and we're going to be talking about a subject that I think is going to be of a lot of interest to most people, and it's about how to buy your first tractor and what size tractor are you going to be needing for your operation. And I think this comes down to probably one of the most important and crucial decisions you'll ever make when you start your farm. And you should not take it lightly, and because this is going to make you or break you as far as I'm concerned. And today I'm talking to you more from an operator standpoint, not from a dealer standpoint, because I've been there, I know what you're going through, and I know what your plans may or may not be, and it's going to be critical for you to make that right decision. And so we'll cover that today. We're going to talk about farm size, we're going to talk about attachments, we're going to talk about budget, we'll talk about farm tasks, we'll talk about storage, we'll even talk about your budget issue. Also, the concept of renting versus purchasing. So stay tuned today. We're going to cover all that. And then future videos, we're going to break down compact tractors versus utility tractors. And we'll kind of dig a little deeper on each episode. So I think you guys really enjoy it. And hopefully you stay tuned and learn something from it. So with that said, let's get into it. So the first thing you need to do is assess your farm size and your terrain. Now, depending on what your property is going to dictate, some of the conditions that you'll deal with as well. So let's first off talk about seasons. If you live, like I live in northeastern Ohio, I basically deal with every type of season that there is. Our summers are hot and dry, and then we've had torrential rains when we do have rains. We have cool fall, and leaves change, and that looks really nice. Then it goes into winter time, and this year's been a terrible winter. We've had ice and snow. Most of the year it's really cold, and my driveway is icy. So, I have to contend with that. Then spring will come, and it's going to get wet and sloppy. So for me, a tractor that I would be looking at was more in the four-wheel drive category than I would a two-wheel drive because of those wet, muddy conditions or the icy conditions. So that would be something that I would be considering regardless on the size tractor I have. It doesn't matter if it's a compact or it doesn't matter if it's over 100 horsepower. A four-wheel drive is really something I would prefer to have. Now, if you're on hilly country, you don't want a tractor that's tall and lean. You want one that's wider and it can hug the ground better and maybe be more lower profile. If you are in a flat ground, it's really not going to matter. So you take that in consideration. So those are things you'll deal with. Also, you have to deal with your farm size. The bigger the farm, generally the bigger the tractor to some degree. But I know a lot of people that have over 100 acres and they have tiny little tractors, and I personally wouldn't go that route, but and some of them don't even have tractors, which mind boggles me, because you need the right equipment to do the right job, and some of these people have big fat paychecks and they can just write checks out to people to do side work, which I'm not arguing because I'm one of those guys that does the side work. But the point being is that if you own property, generally you need to have the right piece of equipment to do the jobs that you need to do. So assess your farm size and your terrain. If you're in the woods, you may not want a big tall tractor because of limbs and branches. Maybe you want something short, So that might come into play as well. So that's step one. Step two, we're going to talk about understanding your farm tasks. And this really gets crazy because when you start off, you buy your property, you're not even close to thinking about potential operations that you may expand and do. Most people, first thing they think about is cutting grass, maybe get a rototiller and till the ground, maybe make a garden, and they start buying certain attachments just to maintain certain bits of their property, but they don't know necessarily what kind of agricultural business that they may undertake. For me, I planned on doing a horse farm, and I did do that. So with the horse farm, I'm dealing with manure, where I have to actually have a loading tractor to actually load equipment up with the loader. But I also have to deal with issues of maybe dealing with hay, and I do round bales. So I need a loader that's capable to lift a round bale that weighs anywhere from 500 to 1,000 pounds and also stack it high. And the higher it can stack, the better off it'll be because the more round bales I can put into a space. So those are considerations that I did not think of when I first bought my property, but something that I kind of evolved into. I also evolved into being a hay producer and farming ground. So that made me purchase larger equipment, where I started off small and I had to expand into bigger equipment because of time and running more efficient equipment. And that's something I didn't plan for when I first started. So these are things that you need to kind of undertake and kind of think about before you even start farming, because it is a lot easier to start off properly than it is to grow into it sometimes. And sometimes it all comes down to making that first initial decision to get you off on the right track. And that's kind of what I'm talking about here today on tractor sizes. Because with the size comes power requirements, and that's where the horsepower comes in. Because a smaller tractor can only lift so much with the loader, you can only pull so much with the equipment. Certain attachments are more prevalent and easier to obtain with certain size machines. And sometimes the bigger the machine, sometimes the cheaper it costs as far as the purchase goes, but the essential components that go with it may cost you a lot more money. So it's a back and forth game. And then of course you have maintenance issues with bigger equipment that can cost you a lot of money as well as with smaller equipment. So you have upkeep and maintenance, and it all comes down to cost. And so the next thing we want to talk about is budget. And budget is probably the biggest thing that affects everybody that buys a tractor. And what I mean by that is that, you know, when we buy our land and we buy our property, we pretty much max ourselves out and buy the biggest and best piece of property that we can. Then the next thing is we have to go buy equipment. Well, in your budget, you probably don't have a lot of money. So a lot of people undersize and buy a lot smaller equipment, or they buy some real junky stuff. And I think you need to kind of take in consideration and remember that what you buy in the tractor is a piece of equipment that's going to last you a long, long time. And you want to make sure you buy the best piece of equipment for the best money you can that's going to last you and get the job done. You know, if you're farming a large amount of ground and you're constantly on that tractor, you're going to put a lot of hours on it. But a lot of people that start off aren't going to use their tractor as much because they're not necessarily jumping on and farming, but it all depends on the type of property that you purchase. So again, you have to think about that too, because the older the equipment might have a lot of hours on it, and the more hours on it, the more likely you possibly can have engine problems. And I can tell you firsthand this year, last couple of years, I wound up putting engines into 2 tractors, and it's cost me for both of them probably over 20 grand. And it's very, very expensive. So don't assume that just, you know, it's easy to go flop an engine into a tractor. There's a lot of costs to go with it. And unless you're capable of doing it yourself, you know, I have to pay an ag mechanic, and they're charging you $100 to $150 an hour. So it gets really pricey depending on who you go and use. So, you know, these are concerns in your budget. You know, this is where is it more cost effective by new versus old? You know, and you got to kind of establish what is the best way to get started. And so we'll talk about that more when we talk about different types of tractors that are on the market. But I want you to understand that budget has a big play to it. Also, when we talk about budget, we might as well talk about financing here real fast too. You know, you're going to pay a higher interest on a used tractor, probably in today's market of 2025, 7.5% to 8% interest rate, but you maybe go to a dealer and buy a brand new tractor at 0%. So that might actually be a better option, because here you have a tractor that's brand spanking new, but it's going to cost you a lot per month. But in the end, you probably have maintenance free. You're going to have a machine that's going to last you a long, long, long time. You're not going to put that many hours on it as you would think. Now, I have tractors that I use religiously. You know, I bought brand spanking new, and they got like 2,000, 2,500 hours on them, and I haven't really had any major problems with them, but I use them for the last 7, 8 years, and I use them a lot, pretty much all summer long, where I'm on them 8 hours a day. So, you know, these are the things that really you have to take in consideration in your operation and what you're spending your money toward. But budget and financing are all these things that you're going to have to kind of work out in your head. And but I will tell you that this tractor purchase, once you make that purchase, is probably, you're going to keep that tractor for the rest of your life. When I first bought my property, I bought myself a little Ford 800, which is in the 1950s. And if you're one of the older people, you'll know that a Ford 800 is like a larger version of a Ford 8N or Ford 9N. And they're probably a 1950s tractor. You know, and when I grew up as a kid in the 1970s, that's the tractor that I grew up with, was a Ford 600. And I decided to buy an 800, which is about a 40 horsepower tractor. And I paid $4,500 for that tractor back in 1995. And the tractor at that time was over 30-some years old. Now the tractor is almost 70 years old, and I still have that same tractor. So what I'm trying to tell you is, whatever tractor you probably buy, normally you'll probably keep that tractor the rest of your days, and you'll probably add new ones to your fleet. because I have currently 5 tractors, not counting excavators and skid steers, but 5 actual tractors. I'm even looking at buying another one because I like to expand, and it's nice to have a lot more machinery when one goes down. So I kind of learned that, it's nice to have certain equipment for certain jobs, and that's why farmers normally have multiple tractors, and now I understand why. So with that said, when we also talk about different tractors and different size tractors, now we have to talk about different size attachments. And when you buy a small compact tractor, there's certain attachments that you can use. When you buy a utility tractor size, there's more attachments than you can use. And when you get in these bigger tractors, you're limited on the attachments that you can use because it's mostly a field work type tractor. So it all depends on the size tractors you buy and the width of that tractor and what's lucrative for you. So there's so many different attachments on the market now that it's kind of mind-boggling. Let me give you an example. When I was younger, the Bobcat quick attach loaders that are in the market today, where you have different size buckets and you just clamp them on, and you don't have to do anything but push down the lever. You can buy so many different attachments that didn't exist back in 1995 when I bought my tractor. And loaders weren't even common back then. It was just starting to get known with different markets about using quick attach. Now the skid steers had them, but tractors really didn't become real prevalent. So, when I decided to get into buying my tractor, there was not that much option with loaders. But today's market, everybody has a loader on their tractor, whether you have a compact tractor, utility tractor, and up. And what's nice about it is there's so many different types of attachments on the market that you can buy in Grapples for your tractors, and different size buckets and different angle buckets and skeleton buckets. And you have a lot of different diversity that you can use. So what I'm trying to tell you is that with every toy and with every tractor, there's so many different types of attachments out there that most purchasers are not aware of because they're used to going to box stores and not realizing the tools that are out there to help them out. And so we're going to talk about attachments another day, but I just want you to understand that with every size tractor, there's certain attachments that are available, and they will make a decision whether it's more lucrative for you to buy that type of equipment or not. Now, we're also going to talk about storage and maneuverability. The bigger the tractor, they're not going to be as maneuverable as a smaller tractor. A lot of times people, when they set up their farms, they don't have the proper gate sizes. Normally, a lot of guys, they put in, and I've noticed this, I don't know why, that people that buy a farm, and they just start off, they buy tiny little 4-foot, 6-foot gates, and they're not prepared to bring in real equipment. So, for me, I even have 12-foot gates, and I can't stand it, and 16-foot gates. I almost want to double gate them and make them 32-foot wide because it's so much easier to get in maneuverability-wise. So, gates are important, and so a lot of times people wind up buying smaller tractors just to match their gates. Personally, I would get bigger, wider gates and get bigger equipment for myself because you'll find out if something happens, you need that bigger gate to get into. So that's a really big thing too. The bigger the tractor, the bigger the storage. The taller the tractor, you need to get room in a barn tall enough to get equipment into it. Just like a semi-truck, it's 13.6. Some of these tractors are 13.6. They're big, and they need to have the room to get into their buildings. And you don't want your equipment to sit outside. So try to get the equipment that's necessary for you to, to store. Because storage is important with your equipment. I hate my equipment being outside. And I started off leaving my tractors out for years. And right now, I just lost my big barn that fell, and all my stuff's sitting outside. I'm losing my mind because I can't stand it. So try to keep your stuff stored inside. Take care of your equipment. It'll last you forever. Do your oil changes and maintain it, and you'll be better off. And the last thing I want to talk about in this little podcast is I want to talk about the opportunity for you guys to either rent or buy the equipment that's on the market. A lot of times dealers will rent you equipment for a specific rate. And maybe you might get the luxury or the option to try a bigger tractor before you purchase it. You definitely have to shop around, and we'll talk about that another day. But if you get an opportunity to run a 100-horse tractor or a 50-horse tractor or a compact tractor and get a feel for it before you buy it, then you can decide if that's really for you. And that's what's nice about rentals. Because when we discuss our next segment and our next Farming from Scratch video, I'm going to talk about compact tractors specifically. and then we'll do another one on utility tractors. Then we'll talk on some larger tractors. So you guys have a different vision or idea of what's actually out there. But one of the things that you need to do is get familiar with what you're buying so you know you're making the right decision. Because a lot of times you don't get that opportunity, and when you buy it and you get it home and you get buyer's remorse, you know, it's really not much fun. So you want to make every dollar count when you start a farm, and making this decision for a tractor is so critical because it's going to make the difference between your success and your planning. So like when I started this whole series, I broke the first 15 chapters that I've talked about. For a lot of people are probably pretty boring. You know, buying land, planning, you know, checking stuff out on YouTube, and, you know, looking stuff up on the internet. But guess what? Research is the key here. Use that YouTube, use GPT, use things that are out there to give you the opportunity to do your homework before you make these purchases. See what kind of attachments will fit the type of equipment that you're looking for, and seeing if those attachments will work for you. Because guess what? Because when you watch something on TV or on YouTube, you know, and you're seeing somebody use that equipment, you have to realize, why is this guy successful? Because he's probably using a bigger piece of equipment that can work that attachment better than something that's too small. And I see that a lot with skid steers, you know, where they're demonstrating, you know, a use of a certain tool, and they're using a 100-horse skid steer. Whereas most of these guys, if you put it on a 75-horse or a 50-horse skid steer, it's not going to work even close to being as efficient. And these are things you have to kind of pay attention to, because it does make a big difference. So with that said, I hopefully that this is somewhat helpful. We covered a lot of different areas today, and it's just a good overall thing about pay attention and do your homework before you buy your first tractor. And like I said, in future videos we're going to talk about compact tractors, utility tractors, bigger tractors. We're going to break it down more specific so you guys got a better idea of what's out there and what you can do with the equipment. So again, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you the next time. And, you know, be out there and be safe, and do your homework before you buy a tractor, but make this the best purchase you can make. Do not sacrifice for being cheap. Get the right piece of equipment, because you're going to be thanking me later that you made the right decision. Until that next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Stay safe.